Hello, eighth graders. Today we will be talking about taking Cornell notes. I know, not the most exciting. However, it is, of course, something that will be extremely important to your success this year in U.S. history. You have a couple of different options for taking your notes, for writing your notes. First is to print off copies of the Cornell Notes pages that will be provided for you for each unit in a unit packet. These will be provided, of course, digitally. So you would need to print them off. To me, that doesn't make the most sense. What actually makes the most sense is to have for yourself a U.S. history notebook. And you see I have one here. I've just labeled it U.S. history. I've put my name on it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go through how to then, hopefully that will adjust. There we go. How to properly take notes in a notebook. And so what I've done here is I've simply created my own Cornell Notes page. Now it may seem like kind of a lot of work, however, it's not. It took me a couple of minutes, probably about the same amount of time it would actually take you to print a page off and get ready to write your notes anyway. Now the reason we are doing this is because, of course, all of your resources will be provided digitally. And so you will be seeing them on your screen and you will be taking notes from that screen. We don't have a textbook that we send home anymore. And that is because we use a variety of different resources. So for today, we just have a couple of different pages we're going to look at. Again, those pages are provided for you in a PDF. You see up here at the top, I wrote down the objective, westward expansion, Indian Removal Act of 1830, and the Trail of Tears. I wrote down the unit number. This is Unit 1. When we actually cover this topic, it will actually be later in the year. Again, this is just an example. I wrote down today's date. Very important that you write the date so that you can keep track of when you took the notes and keep them organized and in order. And then I just, again, wrote down the page numbers. Where this is coming from. This is American History, and BFN stands for Big Fat Notebook. I also wrote down the supporting question, which is simply what happened during the Indian Removal Act and the Trail of Tears. You see I created a section over here that you would see on a regular Cornell Notes page where you can write down questions and main ideas. Down on the bottom, there is the section for the summary. And then, of course, here is the main section, which we will be focusing on today, where you actually take your notes. Now, one big key to this, and to me it seems obvious, but it happens every year that I have students, when I ask them to take out a notebook, what they'll do is they'll just grab a notebook and they just grab it and they open it up to a random page and they start writing. Of course, this ends up with really unorganized notes, and students can't find anything when it is they go to study. So please make sure you're starting at the front of the notebook and you are going page by page. This will, again, help you to keep organized, along with, of course, properly labeling your notes with titles and dates. All right, so I'm going to put in front of the camera now the pages that we are going to be taking notes on today. I'm going to do a couple of examples for you, and then, of course, the rest of our time, you will be able to take these notes on your own just as practice. So you see, the title of what we will be reading today is called Westward Ho. So we're looking at westward expansion. So the very first thing I want to do, of course, is any title that I see, I need to write that on my notes, and I need to make it stand out. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to write right here in the middle. I'm going to write, and I know my handwriting is not very good, Westward Ho, and I'm going to just underline it. So there is my first heading. Now we're going to read, or I'm going to read out loud to you just the section underneath here. And then one of the big keys to taking good notes, of course, is to abbreviate as much as you can. You want to get the main idea without writing every single word, which is a struggle sometimes for my eighth graders. They just want to copy. A couple of problems with that. First of all, when you're copying, you're not really learning anything. Second problem is, of course, it takes a tremendous amount of time to write down every single word. So what it says is, Americans looked west for new opportunities. New canals, railroads, and roads made travel easier, and land speculators who had bought up large quantities of land allowed families to make a fresh start by selling them parcels of that land at a big profit. By the 1830s, a total of 26 states had been admitted to the Union, including Illinois, Alabama, and Michigan. Now, I'm going to pull that aside here, and of course, what I want to do is abbreviate this as much as I possibly can. So the first thing that I'm going to write down is really just that first sentence. Oftentimes, the first sentence of a section is going to be important. So that simply said, Americans looked west for new opportunities. Okay, pretty simple, right? Now, one of the things that I want to do is I want to include a little bit about why. And so if I go back up here and I look at the reading, what I see is it tells me, okay, that families were looking to make a fresh start, okay, on this new land. So one of the issues with the United States as it began to grow is that, of course, the population grew along with it. And as land in the east began to fill up, there wasn't very much land available for other people or for people to settle on. And so people had to move west if they wanted to own their own land. And so what I would put underneath here is families looked to make a fresh start. Okay, and I'm going to put over here, own their own land. Okay, back then, wealth was determined largely by how much land that you owned. Okay, and then as I go back to the reading, I'm going to see here, the last thing I want to put here is that one of the one of the impacts of westward movement and these families moving to make a fresh start was the fact that 26 total states now belonged to the Union. Now, one of the things we're going to learn early on is that the United States actually started with 13 states. And so during this westward movement by 1830, we had added 13 new states. So I would simply put by 1830, 26 states had been admitted to U.S. Now, one of the things I can learn from that, of course, is that we still got 24 states to go. So we have quite a long way to go, and we'll kind of study the addition of many more states as we go throughout the year. All right, so as I go back to my reading, I'm going to see that I have another heading here. The Indian Removal Act is my next heading. So what I'm going to do, I'll go back to my notes. I'm going to skip at least one line. Obviously, I want to do that in case there's something that, for example, maybe in a lecture that I give you that I add in there and I tell you, hey, this is really important. I want to be able to leave room for you, or I want you to be able to leave room for you to be able to add that here. So I'm going to skip one, maybe two lines, and I'm going to go and write my next heading, which is the Indian Removal Act. Okay. And of course, I'm going to underline that. I know it's a heading. I've set it off. Okay. I can refer back to it very easily then when I go back to the reading. Okay. And if I go back here, and this will be the last one that we kind of do together, and I'll let you guys take over from here. It says, Native Americans already lived on the land settlers wanted. President Jackson believed that it was impossible for Native Americans to live as independent nations within what had become the borders of the U.S. He felt they should either become U.S. citizens or leave. Okay, so real simple, you can probably figure out. First thing I'm going to write down is Native Americans. I'm going to abbreviate that here. I'm going to make that NAs. Oh, by the way, Indian Removal Act. One of the things I like to do is in parentheses, if I can abbreviate something, I'm going to do that. So Indian Removal Act becomes IRA. So anytime in my notes later on, if I want to write the Indian Removal Act, I'll just simply write that. So Native Americans already lived in Western, I'm just going to put a W for Western, in Western lands Americans wanted. So the land that they wanted to settle on. Of course, we already know people lived there, these Native Americans. And the president at the time, whose name was Andrew Jackson, was certainly not a big fan of Native Americans. And so he actually wanted them removed. So I'm going to abbreviate everything that I read there. I'm going to put President Jackson wanted Native Americans removed from the West. And then I'll put in parentheses, if they were unwilling to become, oh, forgot my C there, citizens. And the reality is here, pretty much none of them were willing to become citizens. So in Jackson's mind, they needed to be removed so that Americans could move into that land and begin to use it. So you can see pretty simple as you go through the reading. Again, please don't try and write everything. Abbreviate as much as you can, but please make sure you try and get the main ideas as best you can. All right, the rest of the time, what I would like for you to do is use the PDF that I provided for the rest of pages 193 through 195 and take those notes. We'll take a look at it tomorrow. Have a great day, guys.